Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Pennimpede. I'm the president and CEO of Canterra Minerals. We're exploring for gold in the island of Newfoundland. Today, I'm going to bring you through an often used acronym on the island called the VLSZ, why you should care about that acronym and why it's important for gold mineralization. The VLSZ is the Valentine Lake Shear Zone. It's called different names in different parts of the island, but basically represents a crustal scale fault zone. It's over 200 kilometers in length as it crisscrosses from the southwestern part of the island down here where the Cape Ray deposits owned by Matador Mining are, all the way up to the northeast through Sokoman's Moosehead discovery. This is really a merging gold belt on the island of Newfoundland, with most of these discoveries being within the last 5 years, and certainly our Wilding discovery being in the last 3. It's also referred to as the Rogerson Lake Corridor or Cape Ray Fault down here in the south, but it's all one crustal scale fault zone that seems to be showing that there's a lot of gold endowment throughout it. And this is just recently emerging. And there's comparisons now being made to the world-class greenstone gold belts of the Abitibi, the Cadillac, and others around the world, but just in the younger age of rocks here, but a similar structural architecture, if you will. People have tried to put the two at scale. This is the Abitibi here on the left, and compared to the Cape Ray Fault or into the Valentine Lake Shear Zone here on the right, showing that essentially it's the same scale. The two breaks or the two fault zones are the same scale between the Abitibi and the VLSZ. It's obviously the Abitibi is known to host tens of millions of ounces, and so far combining Cape Ray's resources and Marathon's Valentine Lake, we sit around 5 to 6 million ounces, but hopefully a lot more to come. So you can see on the island through all of the modern gold rush staking craze that there's been a lot of focus on the Valentine Lake Shear Zone or Cape Ray. As you can see, Matador's claims hug tightly the shear zone here, and then it trends through True Precious's ground, through Marathon, through our claims here in dark blue, and continues on to the northeast. You also notice another sort of linear fashion to the fault zones, or to the staking rather, of the fault zones on the island, as this splay to the Cape Ray Shear is theorized to go this way, take a bit of a bend here before continuing up Camstar into Newfound and through the Grub. It's called the Grub line or the Dog Bay line on this part of the island. So 2 main breaks, lots of gold being discovered through lots of exploration activity, and hopefully some new deposits or discoveries to come out of all of this. If we zoom into where our project and Marathon's project sits and why the VLSZ is so important and why we're focusing on exploring for it, you can see here that the red line, which is the trace of the Valentine Lake Shear Zone, comes through Marathon, which is the gold colored project here. All their deposits are plotted along the trace of the shear zone, and then through our Wilding project and into our earlier stage Noel-Paul project. We're going to zoom in a little more on the geology and how the shear zone seems to be controlling or providing fluid flow for gold mineralizing fluids to come into the host rocks. This is the government geology map. It's pretty broad brush in terms of resolution. We relied on a little bit, but there's probably some deficiencies within it. The main takeaways here is Marathon's deposits, almost 5 million ounces of them, are all within the Valentine Lake intrusion, all right on or up against the shear zone, but critically within this intrusion side, which is highlighted in the pink here. They do get gold in this buff color, which I'll highlight here, which is the Rogerson Lake conglomerate. This marks the bound of the VLSZ throughout the entire province as it crisscrosses from Matador's claims in the south all the way up through our ground. And so you can see there's this gap here. There's no gold that's been discovered. The Valentine Lake intrusion strangely is cut off here by this map line, which to me means that basically detailed mapping probably ends there. There's a lot more cover in this region as it tracks onto our ground. But critically, one of the interesting things in acquiring our projects is the Valentine Lake intrusion seems to stop and doesn't continue. So our main question was, does it continue? And if so, that would be a great indication that we have the same geological setting as Marathon's 5 million ounces, but on our Wilding project here to the northeast. Relaying that into a mag map, you're looking at first vertical derivative of magnetics, the combination of Marathon's data and our data. And this is done to highlight a couple of things. One, you can see the deposits again right up along the trace of the Valentine Lake Shear Zone. And you can see this mag pattern. There's a strong magnetic anomaly that kind of follows the Valentine Lake Shear Zone. The first question is, do we have that same Valentine Lake intrusion with mafic dikes on our project? And within the magnetics, it looked like we did. So perhaps the mapping was wrong. The challenge is in our part of the Valentine Lake Shear Zone, or where it's theorized to come through, as I just drew in here, there is no outcrop. There's no rock. It's all bog, really, with very little rock exposure. So we had our work cut out for us to try to develop a drill target in there to prove or disprove we had the same host. And the shear zone, in fact, did run through our part of the project here. Marathon doesn't have this problem so much. The Marathon deposit, Leprechaun, they all outcrop. Berry deposit's actually under a bog, so that's a blind discovery. Sprite, which isn't labeled here, is also under a pond. Bogs and ponds can be good. It means there's been fluid flow. The rock's been sort of compromised or broken up, and therefore, it's been easier to develop boggier ground with more fluid flow and weathering. But on our part of the Valentine Lake Shear Zone, we see heavier cover up to sort of 10 to 20 meters of till cover. And so that was the challenge, but the opportunity where we saw that there was the potential that the same host could just continue, but it just hadn't been mapped because there's nothing to see at surface. Okay, so zooming into the project a bit more, and this is the drilling we have underway right now in green. What we spent the summer doing was really trying to figure out the Valentine Lake Shear Zone more. And so mapping whatever boulders we could, going around local small lakes where there's been a bit more erosion and you can see potential outcrop or subcrop. And through that, we were able to see a lot of the same granitic and mafic rocks that you see on Marathon side of the Valentine Lake Shear Zone sporadically throughout this area. So the next real test then was to drill some holes and try to hit the shear zone to determine if first we have the right lithology, so that Valentine Lake intrusion, and then second, do we actually see the shear zone? And if so, where are we going to likely get gold? So the first holes were drilled here, which combined a gold and soil anomaly with an easily accessible part of where we thought the Valentine Lake Shear Zone came through. And then we moved the rig up here, and we actually ended up drilling a hole here and here, targeting one of our best gold and soil targets. And we're successful in hitting those same rocks that Marathon has before moving further up the shear zone and continue to see that same pattern. So this was a big change in the understanding of the Wilding project itself, and that we actually had the VLSZ. From the previous geological map, it didn't look like that existed, but we were really encouraged to see, as you can see in the core photo here, that Valentine Lake intrusion, which is the lighter colored granitoid here, with interspersed mafic dikes, that gives you that good rheological contrast to let the gold come out in quartz veins, which we hit here. So everything looks right. And so the question now is, where can we find gold mineralization within the Valentine Lake Shear Zone? And so we attempted this program to drill sort of the best targets we could. However, some of the better gold and soil targets sit under bogs, which is both encouraging but challenging. Encouraging in that that's what the Berry deposit sits under on Marathon's ground. So bogs are good, but more challenging to drill and really better to drill in winter. So really that's going to be our aim for 2022, is going back to the boggy areas and trying to drill the Valentine Lake Shear Zone as best we can right in here, focusing more up here where the shear zone comes through, and we see a broken up mag pattern suggesting more fluid flow within that Valentine Lake intrusion. And then we get to drill on the more boggier part of the project, which is the west side, where we have a new gold and soil anomaly that came out of the summer work we did this year along the extension of that Valentine Lake Shear Zone. And so this is right to drill in winter when those bogs are more frozen and we can easily get a rig onto them. So lots of exciting things to look forward to with Canterra drilling the VLSZ. It's certainly been known to host a lot of gold in Newfoundland, and more is being discovered every day along this critical shear zone. And so for our part of the shear zone, we're just now, testing it for the first time and looking forward to see what the assay results say towards the end of 2021 and into 2022. And then ultimately we're going to get out and drill a lot more in the new areas I've identified here in the winter, which is usually February and March of 2022. Stay tuned for assay results that should come out into the end of 2021 and well into 2022 as well, and follow along.